Hello and welcome back to the Rangers News Roundup. I know it's been a wee while since we last did one of these videos, but yeah, after a kind of fortnight away, we have returned to discuss the kind of international break, the Rangers players that were involved, and the little kind of tidbits of news which have been coming out of the club and out of Scotland over the course of the last fortnight. But before we get started, please click like, please click subscribe. It helps the channel grow. And if you enjoy what we have to say, leave a comment and get involved in the conversation. Yeah, but first up, we'll talk about the players that were away on international duty. Obviously, Ryan Jack pulled out the Scotland squad. John McLaughlin hasn't really been involved for Scotland, so I don't know if it's worth poring over that. But probably the biggest event that's yet to happen, it happened this evening at the time of the recording, but is Stephen Davis beating the British caps record for Northern Ireland. He'll outdo Peter Shilton's 125 cap record, which he matched at the weekend. It was a nice touch from Peter Shilton, congratulating him. And I think Stephen Davis, in all his humility, his first kind of protocol was sending a message to appreciate that. But a massive achievement. It'll go down in history. Huge, especially considering he's an outfield player. But yeah, and also when you consider how good he's been this season. But yes, Jordan, you're somebody who's watched him extensively at Rangers and Northern Ireland over the years. And what do you think about the record and as he approaches it and his achievements with Northern Ireland?
Yeah, it's incredible when you think about I think just the home nations players and the standard of player produced down here across the different countries that he's going to go out ahead. It obviously is the leading outfield player now and will go out in his own. And I think as far as he's concerned, that's not the end. You know what I mean? He plans to build on it as well, but he's been unbelievable serving, basically the best player in every game for a long time for Northern Ireland. Just sort of produces so much, leads by example. And I think he started off in the 2000s when it was genuine and an achievement if Northern Ireland scored a goal. Like absolutely pure, like proper bleak stuff. And I think the thing for him is that he kept turning up. There was a lot of guys that would have maybe played in England and across it didn't really bother with it, and because it was more of a chore than anything else. It was just being on the wrong end of hammerings, but he sort of stuck with it, was there for massive results against England and Spain and the whole way through to then leading the sort of charge to qualify for Euro 2016, which was, I think, his sort of best achievement to lead a group out at that tournament. First time in a long while that Northern Ireland got to anything. So, yeah, I think just his standards on the pitch have been incredible across that whole time. Where again, he sort of changed his playing style a little bit. He was a guy, where he's further up the pitch trying to create chances, for them to be inevitably missed back in those days, apart from David Healy. But he's moved further back and is just the quarterback for Northern Ireland. He's been doing that before he came back to Rangers, and I think he's just shown that he can still do that week in, week out, as well as in the international break. So unbelievable achievement. And I think he still wants more. Qualifying for the World Cup will be a huge ask in a difficult group, but no, he's been unbelievable serving. His attitude in terms of keeping turning up and his humility that we talk about at Rangers, and he never gets too excited about anything. Don't think he was too excited about the new deal. He was asked about the new contract at Rangers, and he was just, we'll get something sorted. Nothing flusters him too much, but the amount of sacrifices he must have made, family, personal, and everything, to play for such a long time for both, and to still keep wanting to do both. I think it's a great, because fans would look on and be like, oh, I'd want to play for my country, I want to play for Rangers, and he's never taken any of that for granted, I don't think, and just keeps pushing on. He's still brilliant. So all-time great, and delighted for him.
Yeah, he's touched on his new deal there as well. There's obviously a range of players that are teetering on new deals, or there's conversations happening regarding it, and we'll go into that later in the video. But that new deal, James, for Stephen Davis, how big a deal is it for Rangers?
Oh, it's massive. The experience that he brings to the side, and he's one of the few players in the squad who's been there, done it before in terms of winning titles, in terms of playing in the Champions League. So yeah, it's massive getting to stick around for another year, and especially when there's a bit of kind of doubt over quite what happens with like McGregor and Defoe moving forward. Having that kind of old head that's been there and done it all is going to be massive next season.
Yeah, he's a. I mean, you see like Mauricio Pochettino talking about and that, and comparing them to Xavi and Iniesta. And even when he was asked about that on like a Sky Sports interview, he's just remarkably humble. He just seems very, very relaxed, very chill, very focused, and I think he's a proper asset for Rangers. And he's been spectacular this season. You know, it took him a wee while to get up and running when he came back from Southampton. I think maybe a lack of game time meant that it took a while to get the engine going again. But yeah, since he's kind of came back into the side, and he's one of the first picks in the team sheet, and yeah, a huge player for us, and doesn't show any signs of slowing now. So yeah, best of luck to him this evening, and hopefully he can get a good result to kind of top it all off. But it's not the only player that's involved in international duty. I think Finland and Glen Kamara, obviously, they had a huge support for Kamara after the kind of Slavia Prague racism nonsense. And he's shown in the first game once so good in the second one. I don't know if you've watched any of them with Finland, Jordan, but what is looking ahead towards the summer and his role in this Finnish team, which as far as I'm aware is a very influential one. Could that perhaps potentially be a catalyst for another team coming in and snapping him up if he continues to impress?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big sort of stage for him to perform on. Sort of seen that in the past. There's plenty of stock held in major tournaments and what that can do for a player in terms of really pushing them on to the next level. I think there's still always, you're going to have it with Scotland, you know, people look at it and be like, yeah, so, you know, he's done really well up there, but then you'll have the inevitable straight away. People will be like, oh, he's doing it against Ross County and St Johnstone. So like, what's it count for? Obviously, he's shown that he's been a near ever present in the Europa League. So that's where he's playing and producing consistently against high level teams. But also with Finland, then if he can go, and I think playing a big role in them qualifying for their first ever major tournament is a big achievement. They're not a big football nation with not a huge amount of resources in terms of depth and all that. So the fact that he played a big role in getting in there reflects well on him. And then yeah, it's about them turning up and, you know, not losing every group stage game, putting a good foot forward, and him being able to sort of show what he can do in midfield. I didn't see the second game he played in this international block, but I noticed he got a fairly poor rating. We were going through the things. You get the lowest rating of any of the players in the Finland team, and I think his rating, although he did decently, had some nice touches in the game before that, he didn't rate really highly in that either. But see, to be honest, I'm not sure we can really read a huge amount into the stuff that he's producing at the minute, because the amount of media coverage and stuff around him with the Slavia incident and all that must be very difficult for him to sort of be bouncing around by all that's going on in the background. So I think a couple of weeks of, you know, he needs to be sort of given a bye ball, even if the performances drop a little bit. And everyone, I think, Rangers knows how good a player he is. And it's, yeah, maybe a case of if Rangers are going to get a big fee for him and a big club are going to come in, then yeah, he'll probably need to produce in the summer, and that'll definitely facilitate it.
He's another player that touched on the new contract conversation. He said he'd been in negotiations with the club. Do you think that's something Rangers can go over the line, James, or do you think that it's going to be very difficult? Like as Jordan says, he's a big summer.
I think I'd be surprised if they didn't get a new deal done for him. Whether it keeps him at Ibrox any longer, I'm not convinced. I think it's kind of one designed to push his value up a bit and just kind of make him a wee bit happier in his surroundings and everything else. But he's such an important player for us. Like losing Glen Kamara when it happens he's going to be a very, very hard player to replace in that side. Arguably the hardest bar anybody outside Morelos for me. He's so consistent in midfield, and he does the donkey work that lets so many other players shine in attack. So I get a new deal for him. It's something that I think we'll have done fairly soon.
Yeah, It'd be interesting. I really rate him. I think he's a top player. I think he's got ambitions beyond Rangers, but he's still young. And obviously the Champions League's coming, Colin. So when I was looking at the quote from the interview, I think the thing that I took away from it, I don't know if it was maybe being a little bit advantageous taking it away, is that it really depends on the size of the team that comes in for him, because there's this looming potential to go into the Champions League and stuff. So I think his future will depend on who's interested more than anything else. And it'd be interesting to see, but it's definitely a top asset for us. And speaking of assets or emerging assets, I'd say one Ianis Hagi, who's been extensively linked to Lazio over the course of the last 2 weeks. Apparently they're preparing a £9 million or just shy £9 million bid, a €10 million bid. For the Romanian, cost us £3 million last summer after the initially successful loan spell. Obviously, James, you cannot speak highly enough about Ianis Hagi. He scored his first goal for Romania, long awaited. He gets a lot of stick. He gets a lot of rubbish in the Romanian press because of his dad, and maybe he has underperformed in that stage. But yeah, is £9 million enough for Ianis Hagi?
Well, we're close. I mean, he's one of these ones where you're not selling him necessarily. Like, his value is not necessarily based strictly on what he's done so far. He's somebody who still has. He's only 21. He's got a huge amount of potential in front of him. His name adds something to his transfer fee as well for me. And as much as people want to dismiss that that's really a thing, it completely is. It comes with certain commercial value that clubs will kind of appreciate. You look at some of the stuff that we've seen him featured in Romania, the Pepsi advert with Messi. He's always spoken about Romanian TV, Romanian media. And that's something that clubs will look at. So $9 million, not a chance. Double it at least.
What about for you, Jordan? Would you entertain selling him in the summer, even if it was double, or do you think that there's still room for him to grow at Rangers?
I mean, if it was doubled, I think so, yeah. But it's one of those ones where I just don't think Rangers will feel that he has been able to show enough or been there for long enough for them to really give other teams a sort of a clear idea of what he's capable of in the future, and then as a result, like, maximize the value they're going to get from him. I think it was a brilliant piece of business to get him over. I think it was $3 million basically that it seems Ross Wilson sort of haggled Genk down from. I think it was, it was supposed to be more than that, and it was like, it's difficult times financially, and we'll do this, and we'll break it down into a few different payments, and that's a masterstroke if you can get him for that sort of money, because like, we're aware coming into the potential that he has. He obviously performed in the Europa League and stuff before this, so Rangers were aware of the potential, still got him for cheap. So if you're looking at $9 million, that you're trebling what you paid for him, which in general is like a rule of thumb you'd be very happy with as a club. But I think there's much more to come from him. I think there's much more for him to produce for Rangers, and I think the key is that he also wants to do that. I think he's really happy. He's sort of happy with the opportunities he's got this year, because I think there was time from out of the team, and I'm sure he was disappointed with that at the time, but I think he also understood it. He sort of changed his approach a little bit, came back in, and it produced plenty of assists and a good, a solid number of goals. So I think he'll want to build on that next year, achieve more success, be a bit more solid, settled somewhere, because he's moved around a lot in his sort of young career. Fiorentina, back to Romania, and in Belgium, now in Scotland. So when you talk about him still being a young player, he's moved around a lot. So I think if he settles, stays, and produces for at least another season, then you'll see the value go up, and that's when I think Rangers will then sort of start looking at cashing in.
One thing about him as well would be that I think he very much appreciates the opportunity that he has in Scotland. He's playing for a club where he's virtually guaranteed, if not Champions League, it's Europa League football. So he's got that platform where he can impress kind of continentally. If you move to a club like Lazio is a perfect example, to be fair. A club who aren't always in Europe, a club who aren't always competing at the sharp end of the table, who they have like kind of peaks and troughs. You need to kind of time a move there quite luckily to kind of really get the best of that for me. You can go there and they're a very much a mid-table Serie A side, and they're not, they aren't a Champions League team. I don't know if I'd say that they're at that level just now. So I think you can see that by sticking around at Ibrox, even for another year, 2 years, it can open so many more doors for him in the future.
I think he's really at the beginning, or maybe even the middle of his journey at Rangers. I think that there's more to come from him. I think this season, last season, he obviously showed in the Europa League, but in the domestic matches, maybe there was a kind of complaints levelled at him with regards to physicality, maybe not getting stuck in as much. And I think particularly as this campaign went on, we started to see him get more involved. He's a wee bit broader, but he's a match-winning player. Like, there's 2 times this season we won 1-0 at home against Hibs and St Johnstone. He scored the only goal. I think he's something like he's got 12 assists and 7 goals. You know, this is a player that's been in and out the side. I mean, it's actually very remarkably strong statistics for a guy that's came in for some criticism from supporters. And if this is him just at the beginning of the coverage journey at Rangers, then I think we've got a lot to be excited about. And I'd agree with James. I think there's a lot of things that are attractive about playing for Rangers. And I don't think money is going to spin a guy like Ianis Hagi. I think it's more about kind of legacy and the impact that he has in the game as a whole. And I don't think he'll be in a rush to leave. I don't think 9 million is enough just now. But I do think he's an asset that'll make us a good bit of money in the future. And he's an exciting player. But the only 2 African players that were away were Leon Balogun and Joe Aribo. They're away with Nigeria, who have qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations. They qualified as group winners. That's in Cameroon in January, February next year. They won 1-0, I think. Away to Benin. Well, a late winner, yeah. Balogun and Aribo both started. I think since then Aribo's pulled out. He's got he's picked up an illness or something. But the one thing I noticed about this, I did a story on it, was the actual commercial value of that Nigeria squad is frightening. It's like there's in terms of club transfers, the amounts over 130 million just in that starting 11. That they put out that included Aribo and Balogun. I mean, you think Balogun didn't cost anything and Aribo cost 300 grand. To me, that says something about the ability these 2 guys have. When they're rubbing shoulders with players like Osimhen and the players like, I don't know, even Aina cost 9 million, Iwobi cost a fortune. I know he didn't start that much, but yeah, there's a hell of a lot of expensive talent in that Nigeria squad. And for you, Jordan, what does that say about the ability of Balogun and Aribo, considering that they're pretty much considered first-team starters, going by the comments of the manager, Gernot Rohr?
Yeah, I think it's probably unsurprising in terms of Balogun. I think he's had he's not been in sort of great form the couple of games before the international break. He sort of looked at his shakiest since he came to Rangers because he barely made a mistake prior to that. And I don't think it's really surprised to see him you can see him as playing international football. You know what I mean? He's got experience now on his side. He's managed to stay injury free. Touch wood for the majority of the season. With a couple of small issues and niggles. And he's a kind of player who I think his height, physicality, athleticism. He's a good fit in terms of playing there. And I think some of the games are real mismatches when it comes to that, African Cup of Nations qualifiers. But they obviously struggled in the last break against Sierra Leone. A couple of poor results there, so I think he'll be pleased to come back with a clean sheet. And Aribo, it's probably, I think the fact that he's on that stage is, obviously there was a lot of stuff when he moved to Rangers. And Lee Bowyer saying, it was the wrong move. He should have went to Brentford and all that sort of stuff. This is sort of proof. The fact that he's sort of in the mix and playing these games is proof that going to Rangers worked for him, because he gets immediate Europa League exposure, playing every week at the top of the league, competing for titles, and then he's in to the international setup. But yeah, there's a lot of high quality players in that group, and I think they'd be looking to go on. Obviously, qualification is part of it, but then going on to actually do something in the competition, and they could both be key players. Because at international football, it's not guaranteed a lot of the time that your players are playing every week. But they have racked up a good number of games for Rangers this season and are both quality players. And While one's experienced, the other one has, you know, that little bit of something different, and it's still finding their way a little bit, but it's still good star quality. So yeah, it's interesting to see how they progress, and hopefully it's obviously very difficult to get a huge amount of detail on those games. But once it progresses to the actual competition, that's another thing that, you know, if they're having to go away and compete in the competition, that's an issue for club sides, as it has been, you know, in the Premier League down the years. But I think there's every chance that they can fully establish themselves and maybe do something good with that Nigeria team.
See, touching on Aribo and speaking about assets and Kamara and Hagi, how big an asset is he for us, James? And can that be kind of accelerated or multiplied by his performances with Nigeria?
I'm not so sure his performance with Nigeria will have a massive impact on it. It's a really weird one. The level of teams that they play against can vary so wildly. They can play sides that have got teams full of established household names, and then go and play someone like Lesotho, who, with the greatest respect, I could barely point it to the map, let alone name me the starting 11. So, I think his club performances are definitely the bigger thing. And playing like European football in particular, I mean, you look at some of the games that he's played in Europe and some of the teams that he's played against. Just getting them performing consistently, and getting them in a single position consistently, because I think the kind of chopping and changing with him in the midfield three, and then maybe sometimes in one of the kind of more further forward wide positions, it's no helping get the best out of him. So kind of settling them into somewhere and just trying to really kind of let him develop and grow in one role would be a big advantage for him.
Yeah, top player, exciting
It's
player.
in the middle of South Africa, by the way, just in case you were wondering.
Unclear.
That's right. I'm sure that's.
I think next season's going to be Rebo's going to be a standout player for us. I think he's going to be major. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs. I mean, he's been very influential this season, but I think I've got high hopes for him heading into the next campaign. I think he's another player that will stick around, at least for another season. At least I hope. But yeah, a top talent, and just want to see him like. I mean, I think it's interesting what you're saying there with the guys kneeling down in position. Just want to see him own the midfield. I think that was one thing that he talked about when he first came in discussions with Gerrard, as coming like a monster. I think was the exact term that he used, and let's hope that that's the level that he can reach, because I think that if he can have that kind of imposing presence in the middle of the pitch, I think that he'll be a superb all-round midfielder. But yeah, speaking of Rangers assets, I mean, all these international players are huge assets. I think the fact that they're playing in an international stage maybe highlights that a little bit more. But Borna Barisic celebrated with another legendary midfield playmaker in the shape of Luka Modric, who broke the Croatian cap record. I think he actually got 136. He broke Dario Srna of Shakhtar Donetsk fame, if you remember him, the right back. Yeah, he got, and there was like an emotional video, sitting clapping him and that, and Borna's right within shot and stuff. So, you know, you got a wee bit of kind of staunch points for that whoever recorded it. But Barisic, very influential for Croatia. I think he was actually hooked at half time in one of the matches. But yeah, interesting. What's your thoughts on his role with them, Jordan, and how that can impact his Rangers career?
Yeah, I think it's been it's sort of been an interesting one, hasn't it? Because I think Dalic has seen him as a strong player and a strong option for him, maybe before he really established himself at Rangers. And I think now it's so just abundantly clear that he was right all along. There was obviously a lot of debate amongst fans. I think it was clear when Barisic came in that he clearly had ability, but he just struggled to bring it through for a while. And the fact that he's playing consistently, obviously he's taken off at half time, and I think Dalic was concerned about him getting himself sent off and that sort of stuff. And so I thought it'd be interesting to see whether he played the next game, and he did, and started and got a clean sheet and all that. So I think it's important for him to sort of play at that level, and again there'll be a chance for him to show what he can do come the summer with that. But I think the main thing especially with the SFA stuff going on at the minute, is that he comes back fine. Because if he comes back injured, Rangers are in big trouble, because it's no right back, no left back for the post-split things, depending on how Tav is in terms of his recovery. So I think the main thing for him right now is staying fit and getting back in one piece.
Barisic for you, James, is how big a role is like kind of a leader and a player in terms of like his ability? Do you think he is for Rangers? And if he is to impress in the summer, how difficult would he be to replace if someone came in to buy him?
Well, I absolutely love him. He's fantastic. And he's quickly doing that Sasa Papach thing where he's just a 7 out of 10 and you didn't even notice him. He's just consistently just there doing his thing, and then he'll pop up with a couple of fantastic crosses. But yeah, this summer will be a big worry, somebody to try and replace, because left backs are hard enough to get at the best of times. When you look at your kind of options in depth at Ibrox, you've got Calvin Bassey, or you maybe move Patterson across, or you're kind of
Maxwell is a boy as well.
Maxwell. But I think even at that, you're still, you're
Short,
looking at, you're definitely short in terms of real first team quality, especially for the Champions League. So he would be a massive loss, and somebody you really don't want to have to try and replace this summer.
The thing that's maybe slightly different for him is age-wise, isn't it? Like age-wise, with Barisic, yeah, when you have Hagi, it's a sort of a different question, isn't it? Because he's got his whole career in front of him, whereas with Barisic, it's going to be a difficult balance, or a delicate balance, between holding on to him to achieve as much as you can with him, but also not keeping him for too long, so his value then actually decreases rather than increases based on what he's done with you. So that'll be one that I think they'll have to think long and hard about if offers do come in this summer. And do you know, why would they not come in? I mean, the guy's won a league. He's been brilliant, Europa League. He is an established international who's going to go to a major championship. He's good defensively. You know, there's the odd lapse there and the odd positional thing that you can maybe work on, but most fullbacks, that's the case. Yeah.
You look at guys like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's kind of one of the widely held best right back. He can't defend for toffee.
Andy Robertson's walkabout half the time as well, and that's at left back. So, I mean, those are always going to be issues, but the quality of his delivery from the left is incredible. I think sometimes recently Rangers not capitalised enough because there's only been one man in the box in Morels. But if you get a team that maybe played with two up front or something like that, and he could just, like, there's no reason that he couldn't replicate the sort of numbers he's doing now, even if that is in the Scottish Premiership in comparison to like a top 5 league. If he went to France or Italy or something like that, I think he could produce very, very similar things. So it'd be a major surprise to me if teams don't come in, and if the offers aren't big. I don't know what you need to do to have a player and make a massive profit on him and moving on, because Rangers, I think it was 2 million, the initial signing, and like if he's not worth a lot more than that now, I don't know. Lost all faith in the market. I don't even know if that's a thing, but it's be a joke if he didn't.
I mean, I remember when he signed that contract, and then there was the interest. Was that like crazy story that his dad was apparently trying to tout him to Napoli and stuff? You remember that? Was something with his dad and an agent or something? And Napoli, Roma, I think Tottenham have been linked. I think even today there was an exclusive, but I don't know how reliable it is. 3 top 10 Premier League clubs are interested, unnamed. So I think they would definitely be interested. But yeah, interest rather. But when he signed that contract, I remember Gerrard saying money isn't a thing that motivates him. He's not interested in stuff like that. And I think, this summer's maybe an interesting one, because I don't think Rangers are going to endorse an entire squad overhaul. And every player that we've mentioned here has been linked to a move away. So if somebody can have Barisic and his money, you can't refuse, right? Fair enough. But I think it's one of them that if he stays beyond this season, and then you're looking at like a depreciation in value, you're probably just worth your while keeping him till the end of his contract. And I don't know, you mentioned Sasa Papach there. I think they're kind of different players in terms of what Barisic offers going forward. But it could be similar in terms of the kind of legacy at Rangers. He's one that's routinely linked away, and I think you say you can imagine getting interest, but if the interest isn't peaked this summer, he's the kind of player that I think that could be a stalwart of the squad, and hopefully that doesn't come back and bite me this year. But yeah, I think it's a big summer for Barisic in terms of his future, and I hope he stays around because James mentioned Kamara being irreplaceable behind Morelos. I think you'd find it so difficult to replace a guy like Borna Barisic in terms of his numbers and stuff. And you'd get somebody in that'd be experimental, it'd be the same kind of process with him. So, a huge player for us. And he was the Ossetic captain before he joined Rangers as well. It's just like a leader, and he leads by example with his performances. He doesn't shy away, constantly faces up. I think he's a top player, and I hope that he stays beyond the summer. Yeah, the final kind of player involved, and another player who's reportedly interesting teams down south, it's Philip Helander, who I've been waxing lyrical about all season, but a top defender. He now looks like he's the Sweden number one number one or two beside Man United's Victor Lindelof at centre back. 2 clean sheets. Sweden have made a bright start to their World Cup qualifying campaign, and apparently he's turning heads. I think Aston Villa and Leicester are the 2 names that have been linked. Rangers subsequently have been linked to a Kenyan defender. I don't want to murder the guy's name because I forgot it. It begins with O, but he to replace him, he's playing with Elfsborg at the minute. Is that a move that you could see happening this summer, Jordan, if teams come in for Helander?
I also, wouldn't be hugely surprised if teams were looking at a big Phil. I think he's just sort of shown, hasn't he, in general, high sort of consistency in terms of level of performances. I do the one thing in terms of the Premier League, like everyone talks about how it's so quick, so fast paced, so physical. So yeah, physicality, he'd be up there and he'd be fine. I do think that I thought it was a strange or a questionable call to take him out of the team for that last Slavia Prague game, but it seems that Jared did that on the basis of going for Balogun's athleticism ahead of Helander. So if he's feeling that way going into games, does that mean that realistically Premier League teams will be looking for him on the basis of his sort of absence of pace? But see, when you mention that, I just, the more I think about it, see, in terms of Barisic, like if you're talking about a Premier League team, like if a Crystal, like there's no one can tell me that there's no way Barisic could do a job and play every single week for someone like Crystal Palace or something like that. You look at like a Leicester, I think they've got that guy Soyuncu, the big centre back. A couple of times I've seen him, he's never impressed me. They've got other guys like Johnny Evans has done a great job there since he's went and that sort of stuff. But I wouldn't say that Helander is out of that league in terms of quality of centre back. So I think it's plausible. And again, Rangers should be looking to make a profit. And again, he's not late in his career, sort of in the middle, where it's probably a crucial time for him in terms of his valuation. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And then obviously I linked to the guy from Elfsborg. I've never seen him play, but I mean, Rangers have shown a willingness to go into sort of lesser tap markets, obviously with Croatia and stuff before. So, and then Belgium. So it's not something I think that you could rule out or say is totally unrealistic. But again, as you say, we obviously talked about a couple of different players here, and I don't think the board, while they'll want to sort of help the finances, and there hasn't been enough probably cashing in for their liking in the last couple of seasons. It'll have to be strictly controlled, otherwise you risk ruining the progress of the last couple of years. So I think it'll only be a couple out. It'll depend on other players. I think Helander's value is probably slightly lower than the likes of Barisic and Kamara, but again, I'm no transfer market expert, so I can't tell you that exactly.
What about you, James? Can you see Helander leaving in the summer?
No, I can't. I think he's too important to let go for someone that's certainly not a clear improvement. I think it'd be a big step backwards to get to move Helander on and bring in somebody who is going to be completely untested at this level in reality when you think that we're going into the Champions League next season. So no, I don't see it, no, unless there's absolutely crazy money on the table. I think when you look, especially over this season, I think it's kind of established that Goldson and Helander are the best partnership. That is the strongest pairing of the two. There will be times when Gerrard might want like Balogun's athleticism, like the Slavia Prague game. But I think in a purely defensive sense, that's your best two. If you sell Helander, you need to bring somebody in who's every bit as good, if not better. When you're talking a guy that we spent £3 million to bring in from Serie A, an international, to replace him with a guy who's playing in the Norwegian league, Swedish, Elfsborg.
Swedish, I think.
Swedish.
Allsvenskan or something like that.
Well, the other thing as well. The other thing as well, I think, is about what the coaching staff see as the role for Jack Simpson as well. Obviously, we've seen very, very little of him, but the one thing that teams have looked to do definitely this year is try and block off Goldson and give Helander the ball. But Simpson, he says that he is a ball playing centre back. I think that's what I think Eddie Howe was talking about him. He's 6'3", so he's got the physicality, but he also likes the ball with his feet. So long-term plan, would this guy from Middlesbrough be coming in as the backup for below Balogun, who we think has triggered a deal, and then Simpson, have Goldson there as well. Kadic, you don't know what's going to happen there in terms of, it's likely that he'll probably look to go on loan or something like that. But I mean, he's a guy who also has first team experience. So it might not be that if Helander goes and someone else comes in, they're actually a direct replacement. They could be coming in as the sort of fourth centre back.
No, I think that's interesting. I think, I rate him so highly. I think that, even before he joined Rangers, I think he was being linked to Newcastle United. I think they might have had a bid turned down. Don't quote me on it, but they were certainly being linked anyway. But I think he could. You were talking about pace and stuff. Some of the cart horses that have defended in that Premier League over the course of the last 20 years, and it's not even so much about like having a lot, but he's still good defenders. It's not. It might be seen as his Achilles heel, and it may well be his Achilles heel, but there are other elements to defending. And I really rate him, and I was looking at it because it's something that you never consider. You're always talking about Morelos, you're always talking about Kamara, you're always talking about Barisic and Hagi or any of these players potentially moving on, and the conversation's never around Helander. But I think very quietly and unassumingly he's impressed in a different way from the rest of the team, and obviously still unbeaten in Scotland, in the Scottish Premiership. And I think he's our best defender, just in terms of just raw defender. I think Connor Goldson offers more as a footballer, but I don't know. It just depends on money again. And I'd echo what Jordan says. I think it's a case of it's like a kind of like a tiered kind of system. I think Simpson maybe because he's left-footed, isn't he, Simpson? So yeah, I think that's maybe the way it would work. And it sounds like the kind of signing we'd make, that defender from Sweden. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it all depends on the interest and whether or not Rangers think it's worth it. But I rate him, and I hope he does it. I hope he's not in a rush to go. One player who certainly doesn't want to go is Jermain Defoe, who says that it's been a special season, but he wants one more season in front of the fans. He's 38. His game time has been somewhat limited, even if he has had a few kind of knocks and stuff. James, would you sign Defoe for another season?
No, he's 38. He's handsomely paid. He's
not even on a wage cut,
unless he's going to play for absolute buttons. But you look at this. He was left at the Europa League squad. I think he's made something like 11 league appearances this season, so he has had a role to play. And he's been great his time at the club. I think 29 goals and 66 appearances is a fantastic return for any striker. But we're not here for sentimentality. We've not got that sentimentality with Jermain Defoe, whereas like there's kind of almost an obligation with some players that you let them just ride off into the sunset at that club. Alan McGregor being one, Steve Davis being another.
I mean, they've got something to offer, I
And
think,
that's kind of also, but that's also the point. So when you balance up what they've got to offer and that kind of sentimental bit, there's reason to keep them. With Defoe, I don't think there's enough to offer because he's fourth place striker at best. He's going to be behind Morelos. He's going to be behind Roof. He's going to be behind Cedric Itten. And if any one of those three are sold this summer, whoever comes in to replace him will be ahead of Jermain Defoe next season. So I don't see the point. Let him go and let him have his swan song somewhere else. Thank you for your couple of seasons and well done on winning your first league title. But we're no a bit of fucking greetings card company here. This isn't Celtic.
What about you, John? Can you make a case for keeping him, or do you think that this might be the time where the two parties part ways?
No, yeah, I do think this is sort of the time. Before this season, I couldn't really see how he was going to feature in the team, and he had that injury as well at the start of the season. I was sort of like, at what stage is he actually going to play here or feature in any way? He actually did make a couple of decent contributions. I don't know why I'm saying that. I'm surprised. Like, he's a high quality striker, high quality finisher. He's proven that since he came up. As James says, his goal record is excellent. But I do think Rangers need to significantly change the way they play in order to facilitate him. And I just don't know how much point there is in keeping someone on the books who is literally going to make 3 to 4 league starts a season. When you do that, in theory, you are also risking something because you're overlooking several other players, maybe impeding someone like Itten, who hasn't got as many. He's played like 30 games or something this year, but barely any of them from the start. So you're blocking opportunities for other guys, and yeah, you're also paying a wage. And even if he does take a cut, he's not going to be on a low wage, which is what I think the only way you can justify someone being there who's not going to play any significant amount of time. So
it doesn't help that he's not Scottish either. See, if he'd been Scottish, you could have made the case it would take a homegrown player spot in the Champions League squad. But as it is, he doesn't. So he's somebody else that takes up what are very limited spots in the squad as it is. So it's just I can't see a set of circumstances. Well, with one exception, if he takes a coaching role, that would be the only way I could possibly see it.
I just think that if that was going to happen, I think they'd have already sorted it by now, and you'd have already heard actual, rumblings and stuff for it. I think it just doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me. It makes sense 100% that if you're a player who's played for 20 years, you wouldn't want to go out in the season when there's no one there to watch it. And a guy thrives on scoring goals and that buzz. It was a bit of a weird way to go out. So I can see him wanting. I can see why he wants to do it. I'm sort of a little bit surprised that it would be at Rangers, knowing that he's not going to play. But I think he's just come up, been very settled here, hasn't he? And he's really enjoyed it. So
I think the prospect of getting that league title's helped as well for him because it's the one thing he's not done in his career.
Yeah, but I'm wondering what level he'll go to now. You know what I mean? Someone back to Sunderland or something like that. Like big crowd, it's lower level.
I could see that. I could see him going back to Sunderland. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a likable character. He's a great guy to have around. He's obviously a really popular figure in the squad. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think Rangers will have any sentimentality when it comes to Jermain Defoe. So I think that if they do decide to keep him, it'll be for reasons that they believe that he's going to be useful or whatever. But no, I struggle to see it. It'll be. I mean, I'll applaud him if he does go, because I think he's not a Rangers fan out there. I didn't appreciate the contribution that he's made. I mean, the two I think standout moments were the goal against Aberdeen up at Pataudry when we won 4-2, and the Livingston one for this season. I think they were standout moments. But he's contributed a lot in the kind of the kind of compartmentalised appearances that he's had. Because he hasn't been a first team regular. But when he has played, he's done well. But yeah, I think he's been a wee bit older, and I think he wants to play. I think that's the message. He looks fit. He wants to play. So, England, like I say, England have always had these strikers that play until they're 42, 43, and that'll be Defoe, man. Like, he'll be still be kicking about somewhere, he'll do a job wherever he goes, but it might well be at Rangers, and I mean, I wouldn't be completely against it if that's what they feel is right, but it's hard to imagine him getting paid. I think it's reported 30 grand a week. Is that how much he's getting paid? You don't know. It's just like newspaper reports. But yeah, I can't see that continuing. But he's not the only player that it's like there's much contract debate regarding. Obviously, Davis has signed a new deal. There's reports coming out that Balogun has triggered an extension. Gerrard says that he wants McGregor to sign, but the ball's in his court, and maybe McGregor just wants to bow out in style. You don't actually know what's going through his mind. And then there's also players such as like Kamara, who's discussing new deals, and probably most dangerously, the two players taking on the edge, Connor Goldson and James Tavernier, who have a year left of their contract going into next season. Goldson was out speaking, saying that he now believes that he's of a high enough level to play in the Premier League and stuff. And James, does the fact that they're entering the final year of their contract scare you in any way? And do you think can you envisage them signing new contracts at Rangers?
I can. I can definitely see them both signing new deals, but at the same time, see if they chose not to, would go with my blessings. I mean, Tav's been here, it's going on 6 years now. He's been here, that whole thing for the Championship up. And sometimes I think you do get to the point where you can look at something like, well, if I stay, it could get worse. Or, I could kind of damage the legacy that he's very clearly built up at Rangers now. At Goldson, you just...
Scott Brown. Scott Brown, isn't it?
Scott Brown, no, absolutely. There's going to be Lennon's another one. There's going to be Celtic fans whose whole image is shattered because of how much a shit show they've been this season, and it's brilliant.
But I mean, you say that with Tavernier, but I think there's still room to go for him.
Oh, there's definitely room for him to go. I think he can do a whole lot more here, and I think he's somebody who I'd be happy if he stayed in for the rest of his career. But at the same time, if he decides that he's reached that point in his career where he's still got certain boxes he wants to go and tick, then have at it, bud.
What about for you, Jordan? Does their imminent kind of contract, at least entering the final 12 months, which is always dangerous, does it scare you any? And can you see one of them or both of them signing new deals?
It's hard to. I think it's hard to imagine, or it's just really weird not having to have in the team at the minute. So it's hard to imagine him just not being there anymore. Maybe he'll want to go before the fans get back in, though. So he'll escape before he gets any more abuse. Because that'll be forgotten 15 minutes into the first game of next season. But I mean, they'd both be big losses. But I also see, I've said before that Tav could have left a long, long time ago, and he wouldn't have anything near the reputation that he does now. But it maybe would have been an understandable reaction to some of the stuff that was going on, the difficulties that he had to shoulder, and all of that. So I think if he's English, and it's the same with Goldson. These guys who will know a lot of players that play in sort of EFL, then Premier League, and that sort of stuff. And I'm sure there is part of them, at least, who that wants to test themselves. Particularly Goldson, having been at Brighton, left, achieved a lot, played European football with the concept of I might go back now and show them that I'm actually not only over my health scare that preceded him was a little bit before he left and when he couldn't establish himself in the team, but come back and be like, I'm a top quality defender now. So definitely see that with him. With Tav, again, we talk about whether these guys are good enough to play in the Premier League and the defensive frailty sometimes and lapses shown by fullbacks. He could definitely play in the Premier League, and I'm sure he thinks that and would maybe like to prove it to a few people as well. So there'll also be even more of a tie for him at Rangers, though, because he's been there for so long. He's changed things around and played a massive role in changing it around. He's the captain, and now he's getting sort of the recognition that he deserves for it. So It's one of those ones where I could see them signing extensions. They should be rewarded, in my view. They should be getting, if you're getting some people off the wage bill, like a Jermain Defoe, they should be rewarded for what they've done, because if anyone has earned a footballer's wage, it's Connor Goldson, because he's played every single minute of this season. The guy is a freak in that term. So I think they both need, rises and properly rewarded for what they've done. But I wouldn't be surprised to see them sign new deals, because I also don't think those players would want Rangers to be shortchanged if and when they leave. So they're not going to force the issue. I can't really see that coming down the line, but it would be a massive, massive thing if, come to the end of next season, you had to replace both at the same time. But yeah, I can see a future where they're not at Rangers, which is be really disappointing. But I also think that they will both want to crack at the Champions League as well. And if you go to a mid-table Premier League team, like, there's no way United are picking up Tav or Goldson, so they're not going to have guaranteed European football if they go to the Premier League. So it's a case of, you have this next season, hopefully in front of the fans, hopefully playing Champions League football, and see where you go after that. But brilliant servants, and that they're absolutely incredible so far this season.
See, the thing, it's like, because we've got that Champions League and then they're going into the last year, it's one of them, it's like almost like a kind of catch-22. Rangers say, we'll sign an extra year onto your deal, so that it protects the club, because you just want to play Champions League football, but it needs to be like a kind of mutual thing. And I could maybe see something like that happening out of the two of them. I think Connor Goldson's maybe destined to go maybe the season after next. But I mean, I read that interesting interview about James Tavernier and his wee brother saying that he would stay at Rangers for the rest of his career if he could. So, I mean, I could see Tav being a big kind of playing for ages and then finishing his career here as well. I maybe can't see that the same with Goldson, but I can also see Tav playing down south, testing himself there. But I think it's important that they get them signed onto new contracts anyway, simply so that it protects the club's interests. And I think they all have a good relationship, like the management staff, the sporting director, and the players and stuff. So that even if it was next year an £8 million bid come in, or even a £5 million bid or something come in for Connor Goldson, I don't think they would be. I think they would be able to say that if he was like, I want to go, I think they would let him go. I don't think that Rangers would put up huge roadblocks. But yeah, for next season, I think it's important we sign them up. But yeah, the other main thing is that Rangers are going to return to action this weekend in a kind of strange kick-off time at 6:30 against Cove Rangers in the Scottish Cup. We'll go into more detail about that in a preview. I think this video is going on long enough, but the two main challenges going into the final part of the season are the Scottish Cup, which recommences this weekend, and going unbeaten. Obviously, every Rangers fan in the world wants to do both. But Jordan, if you had to choose between either, what would you pick?
Scottish Cup, just because I think it's the more significant thing. You look back to it'll be the season that Rangers, turned everything on its head and won the double. Not the season where Rangers won the league, absolutely wiped the floor with everyone else and were unbeaten, but got knocked out of both cups and were disappointed in those competitions and really didn't hammer home that advantage that they obviously had in the league. I think everyone, I think Gerard, even though he's not really spoken about it, I think he really wants to do the unbeaten thing. I think that'll be a really big motivating factor for him, and it's got to be for the players now, because they've got to keep those high standards up and all that. And it's so close now. You've gone so far. It's so close. But I do sort of agree with him with what he said publicly, that the priority is the Scottish Cup, because to go so long without silverware and then go bang bang, win 2 in a row, is a big statement of intent, especially ahead of next year. And I think that's a priority.
What about for you, James?
Completely disagree. Many times have Rangers won the Scottish Cup?
I don't know the exact number, but yeah, I get the point that you're making.
33. We've won the Scottish Cup 33 times. Many times have we went a full season in the top flight unbeaten?
I think once we won the 18 games out of 18.
So, which one's the bigger achievement?
See,
Which one's harder to do?
What one do you get a trophy for, though?
But you only win 5 games to win the Scottish Cup. I mean, getting the silverware is fantastic, and it's a great wee thing to have the photo of and everything else. But in terms of the actual achievement of what you're doing, surely going 38 games without losing against the 11 best teams in the country is much better than winning one-off games against currently Cove Rangers, who are the 5th or 6th best team in League One, and then winning another 4 games against who knows who.
But for me, though,
the thing is, I get what you're saying, right? And I think the public thing, the same as Gerrard, has to be you want to get the trophy. Rangers as a club are defined by trophies. We're the most successful club in the world. All that stuff. I think getting an extra number on the trophy count is probably the most important thing. So I think when you actually boil it back, I think the trophy would probably win. But in terms of history, in terms of like a historical achievement, I think your average Scottish Cup win isn't going to beat a season unbeaten. So, I mean, a season unbeaten would be remarkable, like genuinely. And to do it this season when we won 55, they thought that they're setting fire to all those T-shirts with 10 in a row written on it and all that. And we would go unbeaten. It would be so special. But the extra trophy win and the extra point on the board as Rangers look to kind of reassert their dominance and to take another trophy, I think symbolically is important as well.
Let me flip it around then. Would you have rather taken a cup double, League Cup and Scottish Cup, over the title?
No, never.
It is more trophies after all.
Aye, but it's I understand that, but the league title is a big one. You know, you're the champions. You're not the champions if you win the Scottish Cup.
I also think that, like, yes, the concept of going unbeaten against the 11 other best teams in the country is a major achievement, but the achievement, you know, you're already getting a reward for being the best of those teams by winning the league. So it's not as if you're getting nothing, that you've already got the league.
Oh yeah,
that's why I also think
in terms of just getting something physical out of it, yeah, it would be the cup all the way. But I think in terms of showing and laying that benchmark for where you are as a team, I mean, seeing you think about the Premier League in the last 20 years, if you name the best teams in the Premier League in the last 20, 25 years, one of the first teams anybody will mention is Arsenal Invincibles.
Yeah.
And they're the one that has a name because they were the Arsenal Invincibles, because they done that one thing that hardly any, or in that case, nobody else has done. I mean, even in terms of the Scottish top flight, since 1898 was the first season. There's been 3-4 maybe unbeaten seasons that clubs have recorded in 130 years. There's a Scottish Cup winner every year, mate. Right?
I mean, I get that, and like in the back of my head, there's just that, and it's not that. It's Celtic done it, and they would be raging. It would just undercut their achievement and stuff as well. It's just it's so attractive, you know. By the way, this conversation is completely defunct because we're obviously going to do both. Right? I mean, I get it's hard, man. It's hard because it's legacy building stuff. You know what James says, if you go unbeaten. And that's a challenge. I mean, even last season, we won 4 out of the 5 post-split fixtures, and I think it was a record. You know, and I mean, it's obviously not going to be easy. So if we do it, we'll have earned it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. And it's not just that. It's like, if we don't get beaten this season, right, with how dominant we've been, and hopefully we win the Scottish Cup as well, but obviously the conversation is just a bit of fun comparing the two. But if we go unbeaten, right, this season, and we're going into the next season having not been beaten, you know, it's just a mental edge that we've got over Celtic straight away. You know, and in terms of, and everybody's going to want to beat us, but then see when you're on these runs, like eventually there's this aura that you feel like almost unbeatable, and teams are kind of half beaten before they even step into a stadium and stuff, you know. So in terms of, I think it would be a huge boost for us, but conversely, I think Celtic would take a huge boost if they manage to win the Scottish Cup. But obviously, there's loads of other teams in it as well. But I mean, let's do both. You know, let's just win both of them. I can't. It's hard for me to give a definitive answer, but I think when I boil it right down, I think getting the trophy is the big thing. But I would absolutely love it if we went unbeaten, man. I would. I think it would be huge. And the thing is, you're going the last day, right? Last day, we're playing Aberdeen. It's trophy day and all that. And you know, right, that if we even draw, right, but like if we win, draw, whatever, and we get the trophy, then we've done the whole season unbeaten on the same day. You know, it just multiplies the celebrations. It would be superb, man. And basically, it all starts this weekend, doesn't it? When we start up again, and it's going to be, there's still plenty to play for heading into the last leg. I think after we won the league, there was maybe a wee bit of a lull, and even that Old Firm game felt strange in approach to it. And obviously, there's many complaints about the international break and stuff, but heading into this wee portion here, there's still plenty to play for, and I'm looking forward to it. But anything else you want to add over the last 2 weeks, lads? Are you ready to?
No, happy to wrap up.
That's it. Right, no worries. We'll be back later in the week with a new a video looking forward to the Cove Rangers Scottish Cup game. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, please click subscribe. Thank you so much for tuning in, and on the Rangers.